UNIFIL needs these projects in order to be empowered. I find UNIFIL with all the problems and the difficulties of the UNIFIL operation. I did not mention it in my presentation because I was pressed in time. UNIFIL by the UN itself is defined as the most difficult peacekeeping operation that the UN has ever carried out in its history. It's a difficult, very difficult situation, and UNIFIL cannot do more than the parties themselves would like UNIFIL to do. UNIFIL cannot, the UN in general, cannot want peace more than the parties on the ground. Therefore, it could be a major challenge. The other issue, keeping the status quo. Israel is in control of both sides of the village, and there are periodic statements coming from Lebanon about the need to liberate the northern part of the village. It has become now, for Lebanese journalists, it's become, I think, it's a serious undertaking, because if you have to write a 500-piece article and you have to use the entire line of the Israeli, the Sheba Farms, the Kafar Shuba Hills, and the northern section of Ghajar, there you have, 20 words in an article of 500. You are stuck with this. So this is the language that is often employed now in Lebanon. When you mention Israeli occupation of these regions, then the line is very, very long, because you have to mention all. Yes.
Michael Dunn, Middle East Journal. Asher, I think you made a brief reference in the article about this, but those of us who know the region know it's a mosaic of Druze villages, Sunni, Shia, Orthodox, Maronite, Jewish, practically everything. But until Ghajar came along, I don't think most of us were aware that there were Alawites up there. They're a long way from the Alawite homeland, and I'm wondering if you could say something about how they got there.
I can only say what they say about themselves. We don't have, I could not find records, significant records on the village, and I only have what they say about themselves. And I found the Syrian documentation from the 1950s, but they repeat basically what the villagers themselves say, and they basically say that they arrived to this region with the Ottoman occupation of the Ansariya Mountains. They escaped, because the Ottomans came with this Sunni message of dominance, and these were poor Alawites, and for some reason these three villages left. They don't explain exactly why, so they have been there since the 16th century. Three villages, Ghajar, Ain Fit, and Zaura. Ain Fit and Zaura, you can go and visit the ruins today. They are from Banyas to Majd al-Shams. You take the road up the Golan Heights and you can see the ruins of the two villages, and they were basically depopulated in 1967. Ghajar was the smallest of the three, much smaller, but for a reason again that I do not know, they owned their land, whereas the other two did not own their land. They were basically vassals of Amir al-Faur, the largest landowner in the Golan Heights, but Ghajar people own their land, and they, like you said, they provide another piece in this very, very fascinating mosaic. There are no Protestants in this region. I don't think they know. Well, by now they know what Protestants are, but 100 years ago they didn't.
The Americans brought Protestantism to the region. Here's the question.
Yeah, George Cody, American Task Force for Lebanon. I have a two-part question. One, just going back to your comment about UNIFIL, United Nations, somehow taking over the administration of Ghajar. Wouldn't Israel have real concerns about that, since they always want the prerogative of providing for their own security and not really relying on the United Nations or any other organization to provide security for them? Could you address that point? And how to get around that. And then secondly, the northern Ghajar, who owned that land before as expansion took place? Who were the property owners there, and how did they, when they did expand, were there any deeds that had to be worked out? I mean, I don't know.
Nobody contests that the northern part of the village is privately owned by Ghajar residents. This is accepted by everybody. They have their kushans, they have their deeds, land deeds. It's privately owned, but private land ownership, as we all know, has nothing to do with the sovereignty. But this is land privately owned by the village. Has been so at least since the beginning of the French Mandate, when we have documentation about that. So the villagers basically expanded into territory that they owned, that I argue was under Syrian control until June 67. As for UNIFIL and the UN, probably many of you are aware of the discomfort that Israel feels with the UN. I find it completely unjustifiable because I think in the long history of UN involvement in this region, Israel has fared fairly decently, fairly well with the UN, but nevertheless there is a very strong impression in Israel, particularly with the current political leadership, that the UN is for no good. Very, very strong sense. And there is no attempt, there is almost a disregard for the United Nations. And this is manifested also in Israeli relationship with UNIFIL, that Israel do not trust, basically. Lieberman's suggestion to, build a separation barrier, he basically borrowed a term from the occupied territories, the Palestinian occupied territories said, we'll build a separation barrier and we'll just move them all to the south, is reflective of this, and also it reflects the Israeli distrust of the UN. I don't have the magic recipe here, but I know that because Israel does not make any claims, sovereignty claims or control claims over the northern section of Raja, with the exception of the security considerations. Israel wants the northern part of Raja to be secured for its own good. Then I think we could reach some kind of an agreement with perhaps UN involvement and UNIFIL over supplying these security arrangements. When Obama came to power, he made it through, of course, the Mitchell team, part of the agenda of the Mitchell team. Let's pressure Israel to withdraw from northern Raja as a sign of goodwill for the Senora administration, and we'll start rolling the ball of Lebanese-Israeli negotiations over possible peace, who knows. But this has been pushed aside, and as we all know, Mitchell is backpedaling now in the muddy water of the Israeli-Palestinian and Israeli-Syrian and Lebanese conflict. So I'm puzzled as you are, but I think there is a way to, it's a question of energy and interest. It's always like this. If you have an interest, then, but in order to have an interest, I wish this community would have been more powerful, with more resources, but you go to the village and you see immediately that these are 2,000, I cannot say impoverished because they are not impoverished. They have fared relatively well within Israeli society, becoming Israeli citizens, and economically they are doing relatively well for their, if you compare them with other Arab villages in Israel. And they have also become border entrepreneurs. This is something I did not mention here at all. But they are the classical border entrepreneurs. I mean, if you go to the US-Mexico border, and you will find very similar communities making money off their presence along the boundary. So you smuggle everything that is available, and everything is okay because this is a way to make a living, and this is how border communities function, particularly when there are so much on the margins.
A lot of the things to smuggle.
Yes.
Question back here.
The 1948 Israel-Lebanon mission would have been farther to the south, but did they leave any documentation behind that would have shed any light on this?
The 1948
Israel-Lebanon commission that would have monitored the armistice. I'm just wondering if you examined any of their records.
They don't deal with Ghajar because Ghajar was not within their mandate.
Right.
Their mandate was, let's go. Their mandate was from here to here, and Ghajar was not
right.
part of their mandate. So
no, I understand. I just was wondering if they
might, what we have, we do have actually substantive documentation that did not come up at this time, but I'm sure that would come once there is the final peace agreement between Lebanon and Israel, and finally we have to reach an agreement over internationally recognized boundaries. There is this agreement between Lebanon and Israel over this section, from Metula to here, this one.